week at early dawn, they went to the tomb, taking the spices that they had prepared, and they found the stone rolled away from the tomb. When they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly two men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but he is risen. Remember how in Galilee that the Son of Man must be handed over to the hands of sinners and be crucified, and on the third day rise again." Then they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all this to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other woman with them who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter got up and ran, stooping and looking in. He saw the linen cloths by themselves. Then he went home, amazed at what happened. This is the word of the Lord.
The Easter story is told in many ways and many voices. In the Gospels, we get 4 versions. We don't always get 4 versions of different stories. Christmas, we only get 2. Easter's story comes to us in all the Gospels and is presented through the ages by countless voices. Many of them have had a very similar lens in how they see the world. We have spent our Lent journey looking at the different lenses by which we look onto the world. We've talked about how our culture, our ethnicity, our nationality, our religious identity, how much money we make, our gender identity, how each of these impact the ways we look at Scripture and read it, and how we project onto Jesus from our own experiences. So today, we come to the climax of our story on Easter morning. An empty tomb, chaotic tales and discoveries, confusion abound. Movies and storytellers have tried to make sense of how the 4 Gospels go together. Preachers and church traditions have conflated the 4 versions into one, trying to streamline it, smooth it, clear out the differences, make it simpler, more inspirational. So today, I want to invite you, knowing all the lenses we bring to it, the diversity of voices we have, muddy up the story a little bit. Let's not just take the streamlined, simple, watered-down version. Let's not take the amped-up, souped-up, overly lit Hollywood production version. Let's just muddy the waters and see what we see, what comes to us. Forget about what we assumed happens. Forget about what we told was happening. Just ask, what happened and why? These women get to the tomb, these Marys, Mary, a bunch of girls named Mary, along with the others who were with them. Just a chapter ago, Luke said, the women who came from Galilee with him. It seems there's a large group of women, and they've been funding this whole Jesus movement. If you read the Gospels carefully and read beyond what a lot of people who have my demographic keep saying, it seems to be the women who've been funding this thing, and they're the ones who stay by the cross while the men are hiding out. So it only makes sense that at the resurrection, they're the ones that spent Passover preparing to come back. Now, to be fair to those men, these ladies had a lot less chance of being arrested than them. Just to be fair to the gentlemen. But the ladies are driving it, and if we were to stick strictly to the Scriptures, us men wouldn't be allowed to come in on Easter Sunday until 3/4 of the way through the service. Just saying. So the Mari approach, they apply spices and ointments to the body, the traditional burial customs. That's their goal. They came with an intentionality. They could not go earlier. It was the Sabbath, their culture. See, our lenses shape the story, the places we come from. The women probably came, gathered around in amazement or fear, awe, wonder, complete confusion. It's an empty tomb. And then two men in dazzling clothing appear out of nowhere. This is one of those moments where I feel like I need to pause. Most of our cast so far, our entire cast is female, 6 or more maybe, and then two men in dazzling clothes. I've never seen this version on an Easter video. A whole group of women and then men in what I would consider dazzling clothes. What do you imagine when you hear dazzling clothes? Morley's like, check out my threads. If you Google this scene and the way artists have portrayed it through the years, you'll find lots of old paintings. But there's a similar thread between them all. White men in white robes. White men with angel wings. White men lit from behind. It's clear to see what those in the Renaissance had come to mind when they heard men in dazzling clothes. But what comes to mind for you? What's dazzling? Do you imagine more Elton John or Ric Flair? As the wrestling fans, I heard a woo out there. Is it more tasteful and elegant, dazzling? Or is it more RuPaul drag show? Where does your mind go when you hear suddenly dazzling? There you go. Now, Liberace, yes. So some of you are thinking right now, what in the world does this have to do with Easter and resurrection? Absolutely nothing. But if we can't unpack the little questions, if we can't think for ourselves what the scene looked like, the people who were there, what they might have felt, if we can't do that work for ourselves, how can we imagine addressing the giant question at the center of this text? How can we unpack that one for ourselves if we can't start with the little things? So we start with little things. We'll start with dazzling. And then we move into the hard stuff. The hard question. If we can't look at Jesus through our own eyes, how will we see past the lenses, the biases, and the baggage of those who've handed us a story? We want to see Jesus through our own eyes. We want to hear God in our own ears, not through the eyes of just the historic church or the traditional lenses handed down, the same lenses that gave us white men in robes as angels. Technically, men in robes as clergy, men in robes as God. They weren't real creative. Not very dazzling. So how can we imagine, if we can't get past that, what Jesus might be saying to us today? How can we answer the question those women heard? That question, literally in the center of this text, from the beginning of the chapter till it transitions to another location. These 12 verses, right smack dab in the middle. Why do you look for the living among the dead? Why do you look for the living among the dead? And in response, these women go and tell the story. They go and testify to what they have seen. An empty tomb, the story of the risen Christ. They go and they testify to everything around them. Peter finally joins the story. Here comes the fellas. He comes to check out the scene, the setting of this fantastic tale. Now, we don't know if the two men were still there hanging out or not. We don't know if Peter got some reminders like the women did of all that had happened so far. But as the scene closes, we get a less motivational response. The women go and tell. Peter is amazed and then goes home. I don't know about you all, but when I go home, I'm done for the night. I got done early the other day, got home. I thought I was going to be home about 7. I actually got home about 5. My wife and I were both home early. We sat down, we had some dinner, we started watching a TV show. We realized it was 6 o'clock, but we felt like we should be in bed. We got home. We were done. Peter went home. He saw clothes without a wearer. He saw a tomb without a body. He had heard the story and the testimony of the women, unable to contain themselves. Then, amazed, he went home. Some were looking for the living among the dead, and in wrestling with the question, found inspiration, found empowerment, felt a call to go and be sent and tell. Others were amazed, but went home. Some were looking for the living among the dead, and they asked, why? When they're asked why they're doing it, they changed their perspective. They shifted their focus. Then they reached out to friends and family. They went away and into the world, while another retreated, waiting on Pentecost to light a fire under him. I wonder if this is why so many of us have been disillusioned by the church over the years. I wonder if this is why so many of us have struggled to find a faith that moves us. We hear a fantastic story about messengers in dazzling white. We hear a profound question that challenges our focus, our expectation, invites us to see God in a new way, to imagine Jesus coming into our lives in a new reality. Then we're told what the story meant to people 2,000 years ago. Then we're told what the story meant to people 100 years ago or in the 1980s. And then we go home. Back to a world that doesn't expect us to be dazzling, that would prefer we were not. Back to a world that prefers we just accept the answers of the past, including the bad ones, and not write our own chapter. Back to a world that prefers we just settle in. Now, we can be amazed. We just shouldn't do anything amazing. We can be inspired. We should just not be inspirational. We can be changed, but they prefer that we do it in the quiet of our own home. But this is an amazing story, and it doesn't end there. God continues to do amazing things throughout history. We've borne witness to it. History tells the stories. We've also seen our colossal failures throughout history. But in the end, in each of them, we see God rise up and do something new in the midst of our ashes. Couple of examples. Just in the 1970s, did you all know women couldn't have a credit card without their husband's signature? 1970s. And this last week, a 21-year-old girl got offered $5 million to come play half-court basketball with the big boys, right? Things change. In the 1940s, the word homosexual got slipped into the Bible as old fears were given power. And today we have a progress flag that says all are welcome on the front of our building with no graffiti. Things change. Things change. It used to be on a playground, you would hear the term smear the queer at recess. It meant the one you wanted to hurt, to attack, tackle, the one you were going to beat up. Today, the word has a different meaning. People have reclaimed what it meant. Today, you hear queer and someone says, oh, that's me, I'm the one that does your taxes. Oh, that's me, I'm the one that gave you a speeding ticket. Oh, that's me, I'm the one who gave you communion and baptized your family. Now, I mean, those have always been the people doing those things, but now we're aware of it. We can celebrate it. They can say it. We have explored so much of God's creation. We have learned so much through science about the human body, the environment, our minds and our hearts, our emotions, the ways people communicate, the ways people understand God have multiplied exponentially. Yes, we still have a lot of work to do, I'm not saying there's not problems out there. I complain about a few of them now and then. There's also a lot of wisdom from the past to draw on. But we know God is not done with us. And while there's wisdom to draw from in the past, it's not going to give us the answers to questions they never imagined. That's going to come from us and God. A partnership. We have to trust our own experience, God moving and speaking to us today. We have to trust that people are suddenly going to appear in our lives and they are going to be dazzling. They're going to share stories with us to get our imagination spinning. They're going to ask us questions that alter the way we see the world, that challenge us to see things in new ways. We know God will keep inviting us to be a part of a story that is alive. The Christian story didn't end with Jesus. It didn't end once they voted on what books went in the Bible. God is still speaking. The story is alive in our lives. Christ lives in the world, in us, through us, all around us all, not just the ones we want to listen to. So we trust. We trust that God will come into our lives suddenly, dazzling, amazing us. Then who will we be? The ones telling the story? The ones dazzling for others to see and be surprised? Or will we just take all our excitement and go home? There's a temptation to end the story right there, isn't there? There's a temptation to end with a contemplative question of, is that us? Happy Easter. But dazzling doesn't make us think of Eeyore. We are capable of so much more. We are created by the living God to be partners in this story. Will we be looking for answers in old, tired out structures? Will we be looking for answers in the brokenness, the bias, and the pain of those who came before us? Or will we live, truly live, not looking for answers in dying churches and dusty cathedrals? We can't keep looking through the lens of days gone past. We have to stop looking for the living among the dead. We have to let things die, celebrate what has been, name its time, its place, and the gift it gave to the moment. Then we have to let it die so that Christ can rise again, so that we can rise again. So the answer to the next question, the answer to tomorrow, can be found with God speaking among us as we dazzle one another. Not just with energy and rhetoric, but with acts of service and compassion, with deep questions and wondering, with creativity, with unconditional love, with things that would amaze us when others look and see us dazzle and we go, who, me? When we live it together, when we step out there together, we trust we will meet those who dazzle and amaze us. We will trust that God will speak through them, and we trust that God, whether we open our mouths or not, will speak through us. We have to stop looking for the living among the dead and imagine what God will do with us. Amen.
you.